All right, we're recording.
Game on.
Game on. So this is Whiskey with Mark. Sometimes I don't know where I am. Sometimes when I wake up and start wandering around the house, Heather will stop me and she'll be like, "It's Monday morning. You're in Sherwood," because I look completely confused. You know, what day is it? What town am I?
It takes a while to wake up in the morning.
This is Whiskey with Mark with Courtney.
Hello. I am Courtney.
Courtney Stubbert.
Stubbert. But I like the way you said it. That was good. Because that's like Whiskey with Mark pronunciations. Strubbert.
Strubbert. Is that like sherbet?
Uh-huh.
Do you prefer whiskey or sherbet?
So whatever. Poured in my...
Well, it's nice that I've known you for 10 years and just completely botched your name.
You're not the first person. It's okay. It's okay. You got my email. You know how to get a hold of me when it's important. That's what counts.
I do. Well, thanks for coming. What are you drinking? We're having whiskey.
What's the ER? This is the Elk Rider Bourbon.
Okay, I'm having one of those too. I'll cheers you.
Cheers to you.
So we can get that on
and
the
your
audio.
cask number, Leet.
Yeah, super cool. We named our cask the other night. We were here last time. It's the Bit Forest and Eugene Tech went in together on a cask, and it's called Unicorn Drool.
I love it. That's got
we tried,
swag written all over it. You need some shirts and some pins.
Well, and apparently when it's all done, you get like 10 bottles of the stuff.
Oh.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long does it have to sit there?
I don't know. It's like a year-long process or something. So I don't know. This is the first time I've done it. So, and I don't know if it's got a label on it or not. So we'll go check it out.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's kind of fun. We originally wanted to call it Unicorn Piss. Rejected.
By?
Piss is just not something that Heritage once stamped on the wall.
By the man. The man shut it down.
They were just like, you need a better name.
Huh.
And we just assumed it was the piss thing and not the unicorn thing. So we changed it. We actually crowdsourced some ideas. And there were some better ones too. Anyway, we went with Drool for now, and maybe we'll do another one later.
I guess I could see them protecting their brand a little. But
these, and I don't think we're going to be ready for Christmas, but anyway, enough about whiskey.
Unicorn Piss.
And Unicorn Piss. I know you. I met you because you had a cool art studio in the same block as me downtown.
Yeah.
And we would bump into each other like the barn light or whatever.
Those were the good old days. That was when I was full time in my own little design studio. And my space
and
was
it's
like
not called Get Punched. Get Punched is your...
That's my Twitter handle.
That's your Twitter.
Yeah.
You were
Arts Digital.
Arts Digital Co.
Artsdigital.co is my design, now freelance moonlighting practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And your stuff was amazing. I liked your little office, and it was very well put together, and it looked like you were doing cool stuff, and you were doing cool stuff. And as a tech guy, when you run into somebody who's like willing to talk to you, that looks like they're doing kind of like new media combined with like more of a high art, kind of aesthetic thing.
Yeah.
That's like, yay! It's like you could, it's like I remember living in Seattle way back in the day, and like really great magazine covers and stuff, and stuff felt new and modern and whatever. And I got some of that vibe from your stuff.
I went to design school in Seattle during the 90s. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah, it all rubbed off. And I pretty much just wish I was working in some zine shop in Seattle in the 90s still.
So I totally picked up on that vibe.
Well, in my space, I did a lot of my painting and drawing in there, and music rehearsal with friends, and so it was a multi-use space.
Oh, and you're a musician too?
Yeah, it was a multi-use space, and I miss it dearly. But it was, it's a tale of the weed industry taking over buildings, and the building owners sold to a dispensary, and honestly, they were a little weird, and they wouldn't respond to my emails or set up a new lease agreement, and they had a key to my space, and all my gear was in there, and
so you just had to bug out.
I just left. I was sitting on some rent money to pay them when they wanted to start things fresh, and they'd just show up and not talk to me, and I just didn't like the vibe. It changed the whole thing.
Wow, yeah.
And then Mostly, yeah, they didn't want to set up a lease agreement or would never respond to email. So, long story short.
So now your office is full of weed.
Yeah.
Or boxes of outbound tincture.
Yeah. I moved out on a weekend, left the keys on a nail. Literally. And,
I remember you used to have a sign near your door that said, like, I can see you peeing.
Yeah, my daughter would make them, and she made the one that's still there in the alley. It was from the last one she made, and that's been it's almost been 2 years.
Because you were in the alleyway, and there was like a little bit of dirt there.
Mm-hmm.
You were near some plants or something, and so people would come in and like
walk up
relieve themselves.
Yep. 2 p.m, taking a whiz on my window.
I can see you peeing.
Yeah. So that's one subject. Making it as a freelancer in Eugene.
Yeah.
Affording space for yourself, being a creative. I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
Just we're rambling. Okay. Sometimes some lead-in questions I do, like, tell me your favorite story of, what's a very Eugene, kind of story. And then, or sometimes I'll be like,
involves hippies and Grateful Dead fans, or it involves like the local economy, professional economy?
I don't know. It's totally up to you. Like, are you a native? You're not a native.
Yes.
Okay, so you started in Eugene.
Super native.
So you started in Eugene, went to school away, but then came back.
Yeah.
And so I guess you did. A lot of people I talk to are not natives, and so one of the things that's interesting is like, what was the moment that you were like, oh, okay, Eugene's my spot. Like, I want to be here. Like, why did you come back?
I broke my leg touring with a band. I was skateboarding on a day off.
Wow.
I broke my leg on a half pipe. Played a few more shows on the rest of the tour until we passed through Eugene, and I crashed at my parents' house.
So it was like night. The broken leg of the tour?
Yeah, exactly. It was the end of the summer tour, and I broke my leg. We had a show in Eugene, I think, and I stayed the night at my parents' house to do laundry. And my mom was like, "That's a broken leg," and I was like, "Nah,
I'm fine.
I'm fine. It's just sprained." And she's like, "You're an idiot. You're going to the doctor tomorrow." Next thing I know, I'm like laid up for 6 weeks in my parents' house because I lived in Seattle still.
Oh, yeah.
And then my roommate, who was my brother, left for Europe for a year, and I didn't have. I got stuck. I just got stuck.
You just got stuck.
I got stuck, and then the band broke up that I was touring.
What was
with.
The name of the band?
They were called the W's.
The W's, nice.
Yeah, I know. A swing ska third wave sort of punk ska swingy thing.
Nice.
Anyways, it was a fun year touring with them, but it wasn't my band. I was like a hired musician.
And you're like the drummer or lead singer?
Drummer.
Or you're the drummer?
I was the drummer.
So does the drummer get all the girls? No, the drummer explodes.
The drummer
explodes. Your broken leg, right?
Yes. The drummer explodes and leaves little green globules on the drum front.
Right.
A la Spinal Tap. Yeah, so I got stuck here, and then the band broke up, and I had to get a job, and next thing I knew, I was working in a restaurant, and then I got married, life happened, kids. I went back to school for art history, and immediately when I graduated, I got a proper full-time design job again after many years of not really doing it full-time. I just freelanced and stuff.
Yeah. Last time I saw you, it's not called Barnlight East. It's called
Slightly
Roasteries.
Yeah, roasters. Slightly coffee.
Slightly Coffee Roasters on the east side.
Yeah.
Ish.
East 8th.
East 8th. And you were doing a really cool thing, or you're part of a thing there. Like, there's this giant metal cube, and there was like some other stuff going on. So you do projects.
Yeah, that's a side project. Eugene Contemporary Art is the side project. And I've been doing that since 2012. And we started with a artist residency space in the Whitaker, which the space it used to be the Wave Gallery. Before that it was the Voyeur, and currently the last thing it was Arcimoto's showroom, or there was another distillery. Yeah. Hard Times Distillery had a tasting room in the little Adobe space with a portal window across the street from Arcimoto's old space. So we started that there.
Cool, that's like in the heart of the Wit.
Yeah, it was before it was the Wit, as we know it. It was the Wit that people liked in the Wit before.
The 2012 with like the pirate flags and the...
Yes, yeah. So we had a residency program running, and we'd have artists working in the space. We had show exhibitions and artist talks and open studio nights. Funded that project with a Kickstarter, and then shut it down, put it on hiatus for a while. When I moved into my studio downtown that we were talking about, I started doing pop-up shows there. And those pop-up shows led to an opportunity to show work at the Barnlight East space, which was facilitated because you work downtown, you hang out at the Barnlight, you're going to get to know Thomas.
That's right.
And Barnlight crew. And they were showing work there, but it was hard to keep up with the schedule of changing artists every month. And so this last year, we did 2018 in January, we did 6 exhibitions.
So people could find that by like just Googling Eugene Contemporary Art. And
you can find our website. I may have not updated all of the shows yet that we did this last year. Yeah. But yeah, all like the history of what we've done is there.
Well, there's some efforts to try to like get some vacant storefronts downtown with some things, some installations going on.
Those have happened, yeah.
Somebody they did a big I forget the name. I don't. My memory is bad, so I'm just gonna like make some of this up. But they went for a big art grant to do like a Main Street thing, or basically to go get some grant money to help do like these pop-up art projects and some of the stuff.
Are you talking about Eugene's storefront art project that was several years ago, and they're in Springfield now?
No, something like that, but it's not exactly that. And I don't know who. Like Lane Arts Council went after the grant, and so if they get it and that comes down, I'm sure that they'll be getting a hold of folks who who would know how to activate those spaces.
They just did this summer. They did the Visual Arts Festival, the Downtown Visual Arts Festival. That was like a big deal for Eugene to pull off, because it brought all the various projects kind of together in the same week. They brought back the Jacobs Gallery, Mayor's Art Show. They had the Eugene Biennial, which started up after the original Jacobs Gallery closed, and so they both happened to open the same week. And then there was an outdoor contemporary art exhibition project called Bridge Exhibitions.
Nice.
And then the 20 by 21 mural artists were happening at the same time. They were in town painting murals. So that all happened in the same kind of week, and then the Mayor's Art Show and Eugene Biennial ran for the month in this gallery. So that was kind of a cool thing to see Eugene pull that off.
And so you got everything that's happening in like the art installation scene.
Kind of. Well, like you pay attention. It's a small town. It's easy if you spend any time hanging out and doing shows and meeting artists. And then I've been on the public art committee for the city of Eugene since 2011. And through that, I've gotten to know several people, various businesses at the Schnitzer, different departments of the city, and you kind of get to know who everyone was. And then you start getting emails from people about projects and committees, and you just kind of get in the middle of it. And it's a good place to be. I like being involved and knowing how to network people, and you should know so and so, or you should meet with so and so. So it's kind of like what you do with the tech scene.
I was just gonna say, you're kind of in the know on what's going on with the art stuff, and you're technical as well, ish. I mean, you work with tech. You've done tech projects.
I'm tech light. I'm a designer who knows a lot about user experience, but I'm not a coder. I've done a lot of website design and worked with developers and stuff. So it's kind of like a foot in both worlds. Yeah. Weirdly.
Well, and I would say I'm a tech guy, but I wouldn't even say I'm art light. I'm I just don't even do the art side of it. I don't have the physical. I haven't done it. I don't have it that my 10,000 hours in of doing arty stuff.
Your mastery hours.
I just spent a bunch of time typing. More time typing than mousing.
Right.
And even if I had the aptitude to do it, I haven't invested time into doing it. So I don't do the art stuff. But what I have been getting into lately is the mashup of tech and art, and especially games. are a good mashup of that.
Yeah.
So is interactive art installations.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting coming from the tech side and just saying, oh, okay, well, let's like tone down the tech a bunch, and like for King Pong, for example, it's like, let's have costumes, and let's have a giant prop, and let's have, button making, and let's have great logos, and let's do some videos of the thing, and let's like really try to have a really cool event first. And the game was written in Unity, and there's an Arduino in there, and there's a
awesome.
radial, accelerometer, thing, and there is technical stuff in there, but it's completely pushed to the back.
Yeah, it's about community building and you're pulling people from diverse creative backgrounds and getting everyone involved, having people participate in the swag creation, and so part of the effort in my mind, or the impetus, would be, wouldn't it be great to have like an art tech, mashup, like a collective of people who can like come together and do these awesome projects. And it feels like on the tech side, it's missing a bunch of art. And then on the art side, as people are doing stuff, they're like, hey, this is cool, and like, I think it could be cooler if we made it interactive. Right.
And like, as soon as you say that, now you're talking sensors.
Yeah.
Right? And so as soon as you're doing that, now it's like we need either somebody on the team who's got a really broad base, and they're like, oh, sure, I can solder up some things and, write some Arduino code. Or you go find somebody out in the world to say, hey, what do you want to do? What's the vision? How can we pull it off? So like recently, the game dev startup coffee meetup renamed itself to the Art Tech Game Coffee Meetup.
Oh, really?
Specifically,
the one that happens in the morning, like Tuesday or Thursday morning.
It's a Wednesday morning at the barn line.
One of those mornings.
And it was specifically because I think it was I didn't rename it. But I think it was because there was a lot of these overlap projects happening. So like when Glimmer Tech's doing its augmented reality stuff, like in the parking garages, they need poets to write poetry, and they need comic artists to do comics for their poetry AR stuff and their comic AR stuff. And so a lot of different disciplines are coming together all of a sudden. A lot of them are around these like Mozilla projects. And like King Pong is a Eugene Arts, or it was a downtown program fund.
Yes, I remember
thing.
that.
And so some of these funding sources are happening that's pulling these groups together. And so right now there's a lot of like mutual gravitation it feels like in art and tech. And so like, how do we navigate that?
That's a good question. I actually think about it a lot, because what I find is there are differing views of what art is, and there are different experience levels and different education levels and different interest levels in what constitutes art. And so on the one hand, you have the creative industry, which would be like the commercial visual design, interaction design, interactive technology, AR, VR. On the other hand, you have what my project, Eugene Contemporary Art, focuses on is work that has a more conceptual angle to it. So to be briefly historical, as of like 1960, conceptual art was developed. This late 60s, conceptual art was developed, and kind of put forth the notion that the idea is the work. And the material is merely there to support the idea.
Okay.
Right? And so contemporary art will be more interested in what idea is being conveyed through whatever material is needed. And materiality changed in the latter half of the 20th century. right? So you could be making work out of garbage and splattering paint and gluing things together.
And that's one of my jokes is like when sometimes I see a thing out in the world, and I know it's very intentionally a piece of art,
right?
But it's like it's made out of garbage. You see this at Burning Man a lot,
totally,
right?
totally.
And I always think the same thing. It's like it's just like art made out of garbage.
Exactly. And the thing that's difficult is not just the materiality that people can have a problem with because they'll think that my kid could do that.
Right.
But walking into a single piece of art by an artist who could be having a career in art is oftentimes like walking into a room in the middle of a conversation.
Right.
And it takes you a minute to catch up. I don't know what you're talking about, but give me a second.
Right.
And so a single piece of art is like that. And it can take a minute, and it can be off-putting, and you might be walking into something that sounds offensive, but miss the whole previous 10 minutes that led up to that moment, right?
Right.
And so, contemporary art has a little bit of a difficult reputation, not undeservedly. It could be considered to be pretentious, and I'm the first person to like shake a fist at pretentious BS in the art world.
I'm big sometimes one of the places that I was in when I had more artist friends, when we were doing the Dada Ball in Portland. And so I was super into Dadaism.
Oh, Dadaism is the best.
Just because it's like throws a finger at the whole thing.
Totally.
And then
the world is ending.
And then puts a lot of effort into absurdity.
Yeah.
And whatever. It's it's like all those aspects appealed to me.
Yeah. It was conceived that literally the edge of World War I. They could hear the bombs falling. Where in Austria, in Germany, and France, where Dada was conceived. So they literally had this like, the world is ending, nothing matters. Let's just make whatever.
It's like nihilistic.
Total, kind of, a little bit. But I think there was still hope conveyed in what they were doing.
And that's what I like about the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
It's like you can do. Now here's a great story for you. I'll make it brief. So, because it is 9/11.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last Dada Ball in Portland that I was involved with was like 2000. No, it was 2001.
Okay.
And they had a giant warehouse that was loaned to them to do the Dada Ball in. And then somebody had donated this very large piece of stuff that they basically based the whole Dada Ball theme around. And it was a secret, and nobody knew what it was, and they were going to do this big unveiling at the thing. And so I get this call, and it's going to happen in like October 1st or end of September or something like this. And I get this call like September 12th or something, and we're like, yeah, can you come down? It's like I want to get your opinion on some stuff. And it was some friends of mine. I came up and everybody was super distraught. It was like this weird thing, and I thought they were crying because of the 9/11 had just happened. But it was like a room full of artists, and like people were crying on the steps. And like I walk into this thing, and it's completely dark. And I'm looking at some of these things on tables, and then my buddy, who's more involved with the show than I was, takes me back to the centerpiece and pulls back the plastic, and it's the front end of a fuselage of a 727 had been donated.
No. And
so
the theme was built around this.
The entire thing was built on the front end of an airplane coming through a wall.
Oh, God.
Right?
The ball is ruined. However, perfectly fitting within the theme of Dadaism, of chaos and chance.
Well, and this is why some of the people were crying, because they're like, we have to just continue, with doing this.
The show must go on.
The show must go on. And then people were like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah, that would be a tough one. Man, that's funny.
So they decided,
funny.
Whoever was ultimately in charge, I think made the right decision and was like, fuck no, we have to like cover this up and very quickly come up with a plan B.
Right.
And so they did, and it was a big scramble. It ended up being fine. But anyway, that was just a little side story.
That's funny.
But yeah, that was part of my Dada experience and 9/11, and it is 9/11. So
yeah, perfect.
The best time to tell that story.
It is. But back to your question, you asked about how to capitalize on this energy around art and tech. And there's a few pieces to this that I think are interesting in Eugene. That one thing I think is an expectation that businesses have for the arts. And one thing I've seen repeatedly is businesses sit down with arts groups who need sponsorship or support or a collaborative request. And oftentimes businesses are asking the artists, like, well, what is your value? Some sort of business marketing speak, like, what is your value proposition? How are you going to generate revenue around this? How is it that you're going to show?
You mean beyond just like sponsorship, like putting their logo on the flyer? Like,
yeah.
do they want to see something in the piece?
Like,
or
no, it's
where
like,
the project's going?
It depends on the nature of the request, but oftentimes I've seen when businesses are asked to help support an arts effort, there seems to be this expectation that the arts are supposed to generate some sort of business model for themselves.
Okay.
And I've seen it a number of times, enough to know that it's a thing.
Right.
And I know Eugene is a small town, and we have a booming kind of tech moment that's been lasting for a few years now. Knock on wood, hope it keeps going because it's good for the city. But there seems to be some gaps in understanding and expectations about what the arts are for and what they provide. And if anything, the arts are for a reason to explore and to experiment and to try without the need to justify failure.
Right.
Right? And I think tech understands that on some level, because startups start and fail overnight all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's the whole point of like agile
and it's all about
development.
And it's all about the team, right? Like if you get a kick-ass team, like in a startup situation,
right?
If you've got a kick-ass team, they might go down road A just to find out it's a dead end.
Yeah.
And then they're going to do it like the pivot.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like one day we were doing, Twitter for chickens, and the next day we're doing green packaging. Like that's a bit of a pivot, But the thing is, if the team can execute, then they could probably do other things. And so there's this notion where it's like it's like failing is great.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's still some aspects to the tech, to business, business obviously, that are tied to revenue and profits and capitalist like modes of process.
Sure.
That arts aren't really tied to. Like they don't need those trappings, because that's not what it's about. It's not about developing a revenue base.
Right.
The idea of artists making a living has an old paradigm, and that paradigm is shifting now in the 21st century. What that looks like.
Did they have patrons or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Now we have Patreon.
Right. Now we have Patreon. Yeah.
But I think I detect a lot of like, I don't want to say insecurity, but it's kind of like everyone has a different idea about what art is, and no one wants to talk about it or like point to well, let's agree for this project that this is what art is.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is art for community building. There's art for activism. There's art for like social programs. There's art for education. There is art that is meant to be kind of proactively, conceptually frustrating, because it's meant to make you think and possibly change your mind about something.
Right.
When I think businesses get involved in the art making process, it's usually tied to this idea of we're trying to make this kind of possibly spectacle type idea lead to some sort of business model, right? And so the well is a little tainted right at the outset, because there isn't kind of a pure idea of how does our technology, how is it experienced by culture? What does it mean to people?
Yeah.
Not like how can it make your life better? Because that's very much a business model. How can I make your life better as a business model? Right. But how can I make you think differently about your life, about your path to work, like your route? How can I make you think differently about your the history of your own education, or your
Well, and there's a lot to be said for just, if we had more cool art going on all the time, we would attract more cool, we would attract people that would like more art. And so maybe there's not a revenue model there, but there's a livability model there.
I think one of the best things that art can contribute to Eugene, pure art that is doesn't need a business model or isn't asked to be justifying itself in that way, is that it contributes to livability. It contributes to, of your business, attracting talent, attracting families, attracting young people out of school to stay in Eugene and settle here, because a lot of students, and I see this with artists coming out of the U of O, is they stick around for a year and then they leave. They go to a bigger market, right? Where totally. They're like, I can actually make a living in a bigger city. And there's a lot of things that play into that. There's population. There is who has the money. Is it conservative money or is it more liberal money? Just
sure.
That definitely plays into it.
And maybe not in the ways that you might think.
Right. Yeah, and when you go to a bigger city, you just have a bigger pond to draw from with a wider range of ideas and interests and beliefs and worldviews, be it in business or philosophy or art making or whatever. And Eugene's just we're a small town, which has a lot of great things about it. But I think building a culture and supporting a culture for its own sake should be the goal of every business in Eugene.
Right.
Because if you're not supporting the culture that you're a part of, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot in the long run, as far as who are you going to have working for you? What are they into? What do they believe? What's their MO? What's their guiding rudder or their guiding principle in life?
Right.
And I think the best companies know they want the best people who are curious, who have humility, who have empathy, and art facilitates all of those things. And good tech does too. The best tech does. And we know what happens when best of intentions.
You said art facilitates, and then you did a little list there.
Humility, empathy. There's one more. Hold on. Curiosity is the main one, right? Because art is open-ended. It doesn't resolve itself, and that's what makes it universal and open to people. That's what invites everyone in, whether you think it was pretentious bullshit that your kid could do or not.
Right.
Good art invites everyone to it, and you bring you bring your own experience. So the way you interpret a piece of art, really has more to do with you than it has to do with the work itself.
Yeah.
In my view. So I think there are a lot of ways for art, pure conceptual contemporary art, to push into the tech space and actually develop business ideas. Is definitely a possibility. I think it has to be shepherded and nurtured and carefully curated, and you have to have the right kind of advocates in place to help the artists be artists and do what they need to do, help the creatives in the creative commercial industry do what they do, and help the technologists do what they do. And then I think it's really important for all of those workspaces to have kind of the ethical voices also, because we all know what happens when you decide to capture all your college friends' data as a whim in your dorm room, right? However, a decade later, nobody trusts Facebook.
Right.
And no one can quit it.
Right. Yeah. And
it's so woven into the fabric of our existence now. But at what point did anyone stop to ask questions?
Yeah. Should you do a thing just because you can do a thing?
It's the classic Frankenstein question.
Yeah. And so I'm not an artist, so
But you are creative, and you are curious, creative. And you're very empathetic.
Yeah. I just wanted to I wanted to use that preface, because some of the stuff I'm trying to do is more goofy, and it is more it's purpose driven.
Yeah.
And one thing I do want to do is create a monetary pipeline to help the artists be artists. And one of the ways to do that would be to, create these, interactive art pieces that people could pay to go interact with.
Right.
You could go have a tournament on this thing, or you could do a thing.
Yeah.
And it's and it's a very clean transaction. It's going to cost you $20 to play.
Yeah.
We're having an event. we generate the money, but then where does the money go?
Right.
I would like it to go back to the artist.
Right.
It's like maybe use that as a way to fund other things, or create a pool that says, oh, okay, we've got, we can help offset the costs of things, or we can do whatever to help facilitate real art.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's make a really cool arcade that just generates money. And yes, there's some art involved there too, but it's not pretending to be high art.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think there are a lot of artists who make contemporary conceptual work who don't have a problem participating in this kind of thing. Like they have different areas that they work in. They have different ranges of their work.
Yeah. Well, no, and I've had people tell me that as silly as the King Kong project is, it's been like their most rewarding project that they've ever been.
Yeah, but it's a brilliant idea. It is. Conceptually, it's funny. It's fun. It engages a ton of people. It's a simple activity, right? Pong is like the easiest video game ever invented. Right? Yeah. But it's also nostalgic in the right ways. Like everyone, at least in my generation, remembers their dad and their grandfather having Pong in the closet that would come out when you go to their house.
Old closet Pong.
Yeah, like it would always come out. Like I went to my grandpa's house and they had Pong, from when my dad was younger. And so,
the kids are here. Let me go get the video game.
Yeah, and we're like, what is this? And we're playing Super Mario Brothers at home, and we've got this black and white straight line hitting this giant pixel around, and it was so fun, but because it was such a satisfying game.
Well, like my son's a teenager, and he went a couple years ago. He came back from Comic-Con, and it was all about retro games.
Oh, really?
It was just all about retro games. Like he's got a gaming computer, and he plays contemporary games as well. But that year when he came back from Comic-Con, it was just all about retro games, and his friends would do this thing that we used to do as kids, which is like they'd come over to the house because there was no online thing, and they'd power up one of these retro games with the controllers and the TV, and they would just like freak out for a few hours.
But how long did that last?
He's not doing that right now, but he's also just like moving out of the house and getting ready to go to college, and whatever. And so there was like and so I'd have to ask him if he's still into it.
Right, because I wonder if it was a trendy moment in the industry. Like,
could have been.
Because what I would consider as an artist, I would be asking the question, like, how has nostalgia become a material? Right. Because nostalgia for its own sake is boring and a flash in the pan, and it never lasts, right? It's a feeling tied to an idealized past or an idealized memory.
Yeah, right? And so that's like the very much like, and I'm sorry I keep bringing it back to King Pong, but I'm still doing the King Pong stuff, so it's like right in my face.
Yeah, totally.
Like the art team came up with, basically they went after vaporwave as the aesthetic, and it was like kind of a toned down vaporwave, but basically it was like the vision of the future from the 80s.
From the 80s, yeah.
Kind of it was the guiding principles, and like how they did the color palette, and like how to decide to do the different stuff, and that was really cool to see that, because I was from the 80s, right, and I remember what we thought the future was going to be like, and now we're building something like that, and it was like had nothing to do with me, right? It was like they arrived at that as on their own. They did the whole thing, and that was super refreshing. I was like, this is like the perfect project, because it's like it's totally hitting on all the buttons I was hoping that it would hit on. Right. It's like because it's a retro game, and like the message was strong enough, that the whole team just ran with it and did it, and it's like, and then it's like as a whole package, I think it works really well. But nostalgia as a material, King Kong is 80% nostalgia.
Yeah,
like that's
totally.
like the whole thing.
Right.
And when you see the parents who bring their children and they play Pong against each other, and then they're walking away, both of those generations had a completely different experience.
Sure.
And one of them was probably based in wonder and weirdness, and the other one was probably based a lot in nostalgia.
Yeah, right? Totally. And I experienced that myself. I mean, I'm 44, so the 80s vaporwave stuff, I'm like, I was a kid just learning about skateboarding and synthesizers and music, and but I think taking the idea of nostalgia as a material even further is it needs to ask a question, right? It has to frame something in a new way, or has to subvert its original form somehow.
Yeah.
So how to make an art piece out of some of this kind of, with the stuff that we're talking about, it would need to subvert it, ask a question, kind of undermine it intentionally, and like present the idea of, you know, whatever the nostalgic piece is, whether it's in video game graphics or whatever. Like those things in conceptual contemporary have meaning, intrinsic meaning, and artists choose something like 8-bit graphics from an Amiga,
right,
art computer program for a reason, for the things that they might mean to the people looking at it. Not just like the good feels, but this is tied to the development and the history of visual graphics as we know it now. Like the Amiga computer was like intrinsic. And Steve Jobs was involved at that period, and what is our relationship like to those things now? You know, so every material, everything that's included in a conceptual art piece will be chosen on purpose. There's not really accidents with the good work.
Right.
There's not really nothing exists by itself for no reason at all.
Well, my pen's running out.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
interview over. I guess I would just encourage businesses that want to engage the arts to be clear on what they need artists for. Always make sure that they're willing to pay the artists, and also be willing to accept what an artist returns, and be willing to dialogue about that expectation.
Right.
Because engaging the artist is really about risk and open-ended, and I think that's what causes a lot of the we want a business model. We want something that we can calculate, that we can put in a spreadsheet, because then it makes sense. It's quantifiable. It's repeatable. And arts are not it's not repeatable in the same way that a business wants it to be.
Right, and nor should it be. I remember one time I was on a stint one year where I was commissioning golden unicorns of awesome as art pieces, original art pieces, because I wanted to hang them on the wall in code shops. And some of the artists were very iterative with it, like they wanted to
process
know
driven.
more, they wanted to kind of do this stuff, and that felt a lot like software. But when I got a hold of my friend from Portland, Mona Superhero, which is she's famous for doing really great duct tape art stuff. You would never know that it's duct tape. Like it's really good. Like if you go down to any of the Voodoo Donuts, there's usually a big wall-sized piece.
Oh, right.
And it's her stuff. And so I called her up and said, "Hey, I'm commissioning pieces. You know, it's like, what do I get for X amount of money? You know, would you be willing to do one? And what can I get for X amount of money?" And she told me, "Yeah, I can I can make you something about this size." And then I was like, "So do you want me to send you a bunch of information about what I think a golden unicorn of awesome is, or where it came from, or whatever?" And she was like, "You can if you want to, but I'm gonna make whatever I make,
right?
And it's gonna be my expression, and I'm not gonna make three. She's like, I'm not gonna make three." Visions, and then you pick one.
Right.
She's like, I'm just going to sit down and with inspiration, and I'm going to make my golden unicorn of awesome.
Yeah.
And you're going to like it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, that's clear.
Yeah. And I think the other side of the coin, if there's an expectation that artists have a business model from businesses and it feels unfair or feels frustrating and like they don't get it, the other side of the coin is the artists who are successful at making a living doing art do actually understand quite a bit about what that means to have a business.
Right.
She understands what it is she does, how her process works, and she tells you right away what to expect.
Right.
I do one thing, I do my thing, you're going to pay me to do it, then you're going to take it, or not.
And I'm going to deliver on time.
You're going to deliver on time, but you're going to pay me no matter what.
And I'm even going to take the train down to deliver it to you and unveil, and we're going to hang out.
Yeah.
And we're going to, and it was like a full experience
And that's indicative of a lot of most artists who work with public commission or just work commission based a lot, like they're familiar with commission work. There is a client relationship, but you have to be in control of the relationship. You have to set expectations. That's no different than being a designer. Like in my career and doing an identity for someone, I have a contract with a list of terms. I write a scope that outlines what to expect, how many revision rounds are going to be, and what the payment sequence is going to be like. And if there's any deviation from that, I've got things in place to like talk about so we aren't mad at each other.
Right.
You know, and I think artists need to do a better job of taking control of their own business life. But you have to. They have to understand that it doesn't have to look the same way as a multi-million-dollar company. You know, but there are some basic principles in place that should be adhered to and will only serve you better if you understand how the world works and how the world is coming at you. I think there's like a shared language gap between artists and business capitalists in general.
Right.
You know, where they don't. You know, you hear an artist hear someone talking about marketing things, and artists, especially from my generation, like the '90s, where everyone was a sellout. And if you did anything for the man, then you were...
The whole punk rock vibe is gone.
Yeah,
like that's,
totally. And I miss it so much.
I totally miss it.
I wish I could just flip people off and just tell them, like, fuck off. I don't want to do it. You know, like, you can't make me.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that, and I just won't get paid or feed my family.
Right.
You know, so... But I think the younger generation of artists get it more, and there's actually a much more blurred lines between, like, personal brand and the work you make and how it interacts with culture and with spectacle and with media and with promotion and all of those things, and a lot of younger artists like use all that stuff interchangeably.
Well, you know what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go talk to a young artist at the Barn Light.
Sweet.
Her name's Anya. Oh no, her name's not Anya. Sorry, I got her name. I got her name wrong. Anyway, I'm not gonna.
Don't try.
I'm not gonna get stuck on it. I can see it in my head.
The whiskey glasses are all empty.
The whiskey's definitely working. I'm gonna go down there right now, and I'm gonna do whiskey with Mark with her.
Oh, sweet.
Because she was in Eugene, and then now I think she's in Portland, and now she's kind of a nomad.
Oh.
And I'm curious, like, what aspects of Eugene work for her, what aspects don't.
Yeah.
And if you want to be part of that conversation, we can go do that now. But I've already taken up so much of your time.
I wish I could. I have small children and a wife at home that need me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was awesome. I am doing a podcast with my Eugene Contemporary Art, and so I will.
Oh, awesome.
Should have you on to talk about community building.
Let's do that.
Because it's about art in small towns, building contemporary art scenes in small cities.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome, sir.
I don't know why we shook hands. Anyway,
it's for you and I.
Thanks for being on the show. So goofy.